Breaking news! There's been some news that's gotten a lot of attention recently, and unfortunately, it's not all good. I'll give you all the details up front, but before we dive into the latest injury updates and major news, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Browns. We've got a lot to cover today, including some tough news, but I promise you'll want to stick around for the full story. Okay, let's get to it. As the Browns look back on their gutsy 18-13 win over the Jaguars in Week 2, it wasn't the prettiest win, but it was a battle where the guys found a way to win. Coach Kevin Stefanski put it perfectly. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't always pretty, but it was gutsy, and that's what it takes sometimes, right? Winning ugly is still winning. But with that win came some tough losses on the injury front, starting with wide receiver David Bell. Bell was carted off the field on Sunday after dislocating his hip, and unfortunately, head coach Stefanski confirmed that he will require surgery. Bell is likely to have a season-ending injury, and that is a tough blow. Bell had 3 receptions for 27 yards prior to the injury, and while his season is likely over, he earned a game ball for his performance. Stefanski shared how much Bell means to the team, saying, "I feel for David. I know his teammates feel for him, but he is a big part of this football team. He will be here as he recovers and will continue to be a steady hand in this building. You can tell the team will rally around him as he recovers." Moving on to other injury updates, running back Pierre Strong Jr. is dealing with a hamstring injury and is considered week to week. He had 1 reception for 10 yards and 1 rush for a loss of 5 against the Jaguars before getting hurt. Hopefully we will see him back on the field soon, but it is something we will have to keep an eye on. On the bright side, defensive end Ogbo Okoronkwo, who was evaluated for a concussion during the game, has been cleared from concussion protocol. This is great news, especially as we look ahead to Week 3. Tight end David Njoku is still recovering from an ankle injury, and while he hasn't been ruled out for the upcoming game against the Giants, it's something Stefanski says they'll evaluate throughout the week. Fingers crossed he'll be ready. Now, on the offensive line, there's some hope, as both right tackle Jack Conklin and left tackle Jedrick Wills Jr. have a chance to play this week. This will be crucial as we face a stout Giants defensive line. Let's talk penalties. Browns fans, we have to clean this up. The Browns racked up 13 penalties per 100 yards in Week 2. That's a lot. Coach Stefanski mentioned that it's something they need to hammer home, especially with all the pre-snap movement and changes on offense. The penalties are making things harder than they need to be, and we saw how they hurt us in Week 1. It's something we need to fix going forward if we want to keep the momentum going. All right, Browns fans, what do you think? Can we overcome these injuries and penalty struggles to pull off another win in Week 3? Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, let's switch gears a bit. The big story right now is about Amari Cooper. Our star wide receiver has had a rough start to the 2024 season, and after Sunday's win over the Jaguars, it's clear that things aren't working out for him yet. If you'll recall, Cooper didn't show up for mandatory minicamp in June because he was pushing for a new contract. In the end, the Browns decided to restructure his deal to just 1 year, guaranteeing him $20 million and giving him an additional $5 million at the start of training camp. At the time, it seemed like a bold move by the front office. They were banking on Cooper to deliver this season, but after these first 2 games, it seems like a risky decision. Let's look at Sunday's game against Jacksonville. Cooper really struggled. He was overshadowed by Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore, both of whom stepped up and made big plays. Meanwhile, Cooper managed just 3 catches on 8 targets for 11 yards. That's not what you'd expect from a player of his caliber. And then there was that drop. In the second quarter, on 3rd down, Cooper had a chance to make a crucial catch that would have put the Browns in the red zone. Instead, he dropped it. The Browns had to settle for a 53-yard field goal by Dustin Hopkins. Don't get me wrong, we were all relieved that Hopkins made the catch, but it was a missed touchdown opportunity. And here's the thing. This wasn't Cooper's first costly drop. It's his second in as many weeks. Meanwhile, Jeudy was showing up in a big way. He led the Browns with 5 receptions on 6 targets for 73 yards, and Moore wasn't far behind, catching 6 passes for 44 yards. Those 2 are showing up. But Cooper, not so much. It's tough to watch, especially since Browns fans had high hopes for Cooper this season. Through 2 games, he's only caught 5 passes for 27 yards. For a guy who's about to become a free agent in the offseason, this isn't the kind of start anyone wanted to see. And while no one wants to be right about Cooper struggling, right now, he's just not playing like the top-tier receiver we've seen over the past 2 seasons. So, Browns fans, what do you think? Are you concerned about Cooper's performance, or do you think he's just recovering from a rough start? Deshaun Watson silenced many critics on Sunday, and not just with his performance. With all the off-field noise surrounding him, including another lawsuit and an ongoing NFL investigation, Watson delivered when it mattered most. The Browns pulled out a gutsy 18-13 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars, and while it wasn't pretty, it was exactly what the team needed after that brutal Week 1 loss to Dallas. Now, let's be real, Watson's stats weren't impressive. 22 of 34 for 186 yards and a 78.8 QB rating. But he stood out early, completing 7 of 8 passes on a crucial 16-play, 89-yard drive that ended with him running for a 1-yard TD. That kind of opening statement set the tone for the rest of the game. Watson looked sharper compared to Week 1, especially when it came to reading coverages and getting the ball out quickly. Most importantly, he didn't fumble the ball, which was a huge improvement from the previous game. Head coach Kevin Stefanski praised Watson for spreading the ball and making smart decisions, saying, "He played clean, spread the ball, and made plays when it mattered." One thing that really stood out was Watson's ability to improvise. When the pocket collapsed, his instincts took over, avoiding sacks and making plays on the run. It's those moments that remind you why he's so dangerous when he's on his game. However, there was a big mistake late in the fourth quarter when Watson threw a pass on third down instead of making a sack. It almost cost us the game, but thankfully, we survived. Watson earned a game ball for his performance, and Stefanski was quick to emphasize that despite the misstep, he's a fighter. The win quiets the noise surrounding Watson, at least for now. But the question remains, how long will this last? On defense, the Browns passed their first test on the road, holding Jacksonville to just 1 touchdown and 2 field goals. This is a huge turnaround for a defense that struggled on the road last season. Even with 5 defensive starters on injured reserve, the Browns created pressure and shut down the Jaguars' receivers. The absence of tight end Evan Ingram from Jacksonville certainly helped, but the defense did its job. Where do we need to improve? Penalties. The Browns were called by 13 teams in this game, bringing their total to 24 penalties in just 2 games. That's not going to cut it, especially when you're trying to close out games. Stefanski knows it's a problem, saying, "We need to be better in that area. It's hard to win. We don't need to make it hard." One bright spot was Jerry Jeudy, who had 5 catches for 73 yards in his second game with Cleveland. Jeudy made some key catches on the sideline to keep drives alive, and it's clear he's fitting in well with this offense. Stefanski said, "We're learning more about him, and he's doing a good job." What do you think? Is Watson back on track? Now, let's talk about what's coming up in Week 3. After a blistering start to the 2024 season, the Cleveland Browns are returning home to host the New York Giants. At 1-1, we managed to shake off that brutal Week 1 loss to the Dallas Cowboys with a nail-biting 18-13 win over the Jaguars in Jacksonville. It wasn't pretty, but it was gritty, and that's exactly the kind of fight we like to see from our team. And here's an interesting stat for you. This is the 5th consecutive season under head coach Kevin Stefanski that the Browns have started 1-1. Avoiding an 0-2 start is great, but now it's time to keep the momentum going. Next up, the winless New York Giants. They're coming off a tough 21-18 loss to the Commanders, and Vegas likes our odds this week. According to FanDuel Sportsbook, the Browns are currently minus 6.5-point favorites heading into Sunday's game. That's the second largest spread for Week 3. Which says a lot about how confident bettors are after our comeback win. Not only does Vegas seem impressed with our performance in Week 2, but they're also not feeling too good about the Giants right now. As for the money line, the Browns are at minus 300, which is a pretty solid number. And if you're looking at the over-under, it's currently set at 38.5. That spread shows that people are expecting a strong showing from us, especially at Huntington Bank Field. Now, let's look at how we fared against the spread so far this season. In Week 1, we were slight favorites at minus 2.5, but unfortunately, we got blown out by the Cowboys 33-17. It wasn't our best moment. However, we bounced back last week as minus 3 underdogs on the road and came away with a hard-fought 5-point win. That's the kind of resilience we need going forward. So Browns fans, how do you feel about the upcoming matchup with the Giants? Do you think we'll cover the spread and pull out a solid home win? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget, if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Browns. Let's keep this momentum going. Let's go Browns!